Sam always trusted his wife Emily, until he stumbled upon a hidden note tucked inside her favorite book. The cryptic message, written in someone else's handwriting, made his heart race. "I can't wait to see you again." Who wrote it? Why was Emily keeping it a secret? Day by day, her behavior became more puzzling. Late nights, mysterious calls, sudden meetings. Determined to uncover the truth, Sam dives into a web of secrets that go beyond anything he could imagine. Is it betrayal, or something far more dangerous? What he discovers will change their lives forever. Caught red-handed. My wife's betrayal shattered our family and her career. Sam woke up earlier than usual. The sun was just beginning to rise, bathing the quiet suburb in a golden glow. His wife, Emily, was still asleep, her chestnut hair sprawled across the pillow. Sam cherished these moments, the silence, the peace, the sense of home. But this morning, something felt off. A strange premonition settled in his mind, one he couldn't quite explain. He got up quietly, careful not to wake Emily, and headed to the kitchen. As he prepared his first cup of coffee, his phone began to vibrate. An unknown number. Sam hesitated but decided to answer. "Hello?" he said. A man with a gruff voice spoke on the other end. "Mr. Jenkins? I think you should know. Your wife, she's cheating on you." Sam's heart stopped. He could barely hold the phone in his hand. "Who is this? What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" I can't say who I am. But check her phone. You'll find the proof yourself." Sam wanted to hang up, but there was something in the stranger's voice that made him stay on the line. After a few seconds of silence, the call disconnected. Sam stood in the kitchen, stunned, unsure whether to believe the man's words. Back in the bedroom, Sam saw Emily was already awake and getting dressed for work. Her smile was as warm as ever, but now Sam saw it differently. He remembered the stranger's words and decided to act. "Morning, honey. Something important at work today?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, an important client meeting," she replied, buttoning up a white blouse. "Why do you ask?" "Just wondering if we could have dinner together tonight. It's been a while since we spent time just the two of us." Emily paused for a moment before answering. "Sure, but maybe later. The meeting might run late." Sam nodded, but the uneasy feeling grew stronger. When she left the house, he immediately picked up her phone, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. The screen was locked, but Sam knew her password. It was their wedding date. Opening her messages, he found a thread with someone named Tom. At first, it seemed harmless, a few jokes, work-related topics. But then a line caught his eye. "I can't wait to see you again today. You're the only thing that keeps me going at work." Sam felt his chest tighten. He continued scrolling and found a photo. Emily in a black dress he'd never seen before. She had sent it with the caption, "Hope you'll like this on me tonight." Sam could barely breathe for the rest of the day. Work seemed unimportant, and every minute felt like an eternity. His thoughts kept returning to the messages and photos. He saw Emily in a new light, and that light was clouded with lies. Evening came faster than he expected. Emily returned home a bit later than she'd promised. Her smile was as warm as ever, but Sam could see through it now. She was hiding something. "How was the meeting?" he asked, struggling to keep the anger in check. "Good. Ran a little long, but we made progress," she replied, walking past him to the kitchen. Sam took a deep breath and followed her. He needed answers. "Emily, we need to talk." She stopped, her hands frozen over the coffee maker. Turning to face him, she saw the serious expression on his face. "Is something wrong? You look tense." "Something's wrong, and you know it," he said, staring directly into her eyes. Emily tilted her head, trying to understand what he meant. "I don't understand. What are you talking about?" Sam pulled her phone from his pocket and threw it on the table. "Who's Tom?" Emily froze. Her face went pale, and her eyes widened. He's a colleague," she began, but her voice wavered. "Why are you asking?" "Don't lie to me, Emily. I saw the messages. I saw the pictures. Do you think I'm a fool?" His voice rose with each word. "Sam, it's not what you think. We're just friends." Her voice grew quieter, and tears began to form in her eyes. "Friends? Friends don't say things like that." Friends don't meet behind their husband's back, he said, stepping closer to her. Tell me the truth, Emily. This isn't the time for lies. She fell silent, her hands trembling. She avoided his gaze. Fine. Yes, we were seeing each other. But it didn't mean anything, she finally admitted. It was just a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. Sam felt his world collapse. His legs seemed to give out beneath him, but he forced himself to stand tall. A mistake? It was a mistake? You gave part of yourself to another man, and it's just a mistake? His voice trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was fury. Emily started crying, but Sam no longer felt pity. His heart was shattered, and words could no longer mend it. The door slammed behind Sam as he stepped into the cool evening. His heart was pounding, and his thoughts were swirling. Despair and rage battled within him, leaving him hollow. He walked down the street with no clear plan, needing space to figure out what to do next. He found himself on a bench in the local park. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, an ideal place for reflection. But his thoughts refused to quiet. The images of betrayal, Emily's words, her tears, all of it spun in his mind like an endless carousel. Sam struggled to decide if this was forgivable, but his soul screamed in pain. After hours of wrestling with his emotions, Sam gathered the remnants of his courage and decided to return home. He needed to finish the conversation. He wanted clarity, answers to the questions that had tormented him since the moment he saw those messages. The house felt eerily quiet when he walked in. Only one lamp in the living room was lit, and a half-empty coffee cup sat on the kitchen counter. Emily was sitting on the couch, holding her phone in her hands. Her face was streaked with tears, and she didn't notice when he entered. Texting him again? His voice, calm but full of bitterness, cut through the silence. Emily flinched, hurriedly hiding the phone behind her back. "Sam, you scared me," she said, attempting a smile, but her eyes betrayed fear. "It's not what you think." "What exactly is it, then? That you're discussing your mistakes with Tom again?" Sam raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "Give me the phone." Emily shook her head. "No, it's personal." "Personal? We're married. We're not supposed to have secrets from each other," Sam said, stopping in front of her and holding out his hand. "Give me the phone, Emily." She looked conflicted, but after a few moments, she handed the device over. Sam quickly unlocked it, and his eyes widened at what he saw. The conversation was ongoing. Tom wrote about how much he missed her, and she responded as if nothing had happened. "How could you?" His voice cracked. "After everything I've done for you, after I gave you a chance to explain?" Emily broke into sobs, burying her face in her hands. I don't know, Sam. I'm so confused. He makes me feel special." "Special?" Sam tossed the phone onto the table. "And me? Did you forget how we built this home? How I stood by you when you lost your job? What happened to us, Emily?" She looked at him with sorrow but had no answers. Her silence spoke louder than any words. Sam stood in the living room, his gaze fixed on Emily, who remained on the couch. Her face was tear-streaked, and her body seemed lifeless, as if she knew there was no escaping the inevitable. Sam's emotions churned inside him, but he held himself back from losing control completely. "You're leaving me no choice." His voice was cold, like ice. "Pack your things and go." Emily raised her head, her eyes filled with desperation. "Sam, please don't do this. I made a mistake, but I love you. You're everything I have." "Love me?" He let out a bitter laugh. "If this is love, how can you text another man and meet him behind my back? Love doesn't betray, Emily. It doesn't destroy." She covered her face with her hands, her sobs filling the room. But Sam was unmoved. He was too hurt to feel anything other than anger and disappointment. "You have until morning. Pack your things," he said before turning and walking to the bedroom. The door closed behind him with a dull thud, leaving Emily alone with her tears. Sam woke to the silence that filled the house. The bedroom was empty, adding a strange emptiness to his heart. He hadn't expected the night to be easy, but he hadn't thought he would feel this hollow either. When he went down to the kitchen, he saw a note on the table. Emily's handwriting was broad, but the words were neat. Sam, I know I can't justify my actions, but I didn't do it because I stopped loving you. I just lost myself. I'll leave, as you asked, but please remember that I will always regret everything that happened. Emily. He read the note several times, but all he felt was cold. His pain was too fresh to even consider forgiveness. Perhaps, over time, that might change, but for now, he felt it was easier to breathe without her. But his calm didn't last long. Suddenly, his phone rang. The screen displayed a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Hello? Sam? It's Tom. I need to talk to you. Sam froze. The man who had ruined his marriage was calling him? Anger flared up inside him again. What do you want? He growled. Emily reached out to me this morning. She said you kicked her out of the house. I think we need to meet. Meet? Are you serious? After everything you've done, you want to talk? Sam, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I'm not who you think I am. Just give me a chance to explain. Sam hung up, unwilling to hear another word from Tom. But his mind was restless. What could Tom possibly want to explain? What else didn't Sam know? Sam sat in his car, parked on a dark street near the cafe Tom had mentioned in his message. His hands gripped the steering wheel, and his heart pounded so loudly that it felt like everyone around could hear it. He hesitated, unsure if he should go in. Tom was the reason his marriage had fallen apart. What could he possibly say to make things right? Sam stepped out of the car, inhaling the cold night air, and walked toward the entrance. As he entered, his eyes quickly found Tom. He was sitting at a corner table, looking at his phone. Sam felt his anger rise again, but he forced himself to remain composed. Tom, he asked as he approached. Tom looked up and nodded. He was older than Sam had imagined, with faint wrinkles around his eyes and gray streaks in his hair. His expression wasn't smug or triumphant, just tired. Sam, thanks for coming. Please sit, Tom said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Sam sat down slowly, his gaze piercing. You'd better have a damn good reason for this meeting, he said coldly. Tom sighed, rubbing his hands together. I'm not here to make excuses, and I'm not here to justify Emily, but you deserve to know the truth. The truth? Sam smirked sarcastically. You think I'm going to believe you? I know you have no reason to trust me, but you need to know what was really going on. Tom leaned in closer. This isn't just about an affair, Sam. Emily, she got tangled up in something much worse. Sam frowned, his heart beating faster. What are you talking about? Tom hesitated, but then began to speak. It all started with her job. That client she was always meeting. He's not just a client. She was involved in schemes that could jeopardize not only her career but your name as well. What kind of schemes? Sam struggled to stay calm. Speak clearly, Tom. She was helping launder money for this client. At first, it seemed like simple accounting work, but over time, she began to realize what she was a part of. And when she tried to get out, it was too late. This man, he doesn't let people walk away that easily. Sam felt the ground shift beneath him. You're telling me my wife was involved in crimes? And you were part of this too? No. Tom shook his head. I found out about it when we started talking. She told me, but I didn't know how to help. I was a fool to think I could protect her. Sam slammed his fist on the table, drawing the attention of a few patrons nearby. Do you think that's an excuse? That you deserve understanding? You've ruined my life, and I regret it. But now I'm afraid for her. And for you. This client. He knows more than you can imagine. Sam sat silently, processing what he had just heard. It sounded like something out of a bad detective novel, but there was truth in Tom's eyes. He couldn't ignore that fear. What do I do? He finally asked. First, find out more about this man. And, if you can, help Emily. She never wanted any of this. But now she's in danger. Sam couldn't believe what he was hearing. The feeling of betrayal came rushing back, but now it was mixed with fear. He couldn't decide whether to trust Tom, but he knew for certain that he could no longer stay on the sidelines. Sam sat in his dark living room, scrolling through old photos of Emily on his phone. Their smiles seemed warm and genuine, but now every frame was laced with bitterness. He put the phone down on the table and grabbed his laptop. He needed to find out more about Emily's mysterious client. Tom had left a few key details: the name of the company, the client's initials, RM, and the fact that he worked in real estate. Sam started searching online, and his first query was Emily's name alongside the company's name. A few minutes of searching led him to several articles, one of which mentioned an investigation into money laundering at a local development firm. There was a name, Richard Morgan. "So, it's you," Sam whispered, clicking on the article. It turned out Richard wasn't just a businessman. He was connected to several criminal groups. This wasn't just business as usual. A sense of tension began to build inside Sam. He jotted down the address of Morgan's office and decided to dig deeper the next day. He knew it was risky, but his desire to uncover the truth outweighed his fear. The next day, Sam parked near the office mentioned in the article. The building was modern, with large windows and a sleek design. Sam took a deep breath and walked in. A young woman stood at the reception desk, greeting him with a polite smile. "Hello. How can I help you?" she asked. "Yes, I'm looking for Mr. Morgan. I have some questions about one of his projects," Sam said, trying to sound confident. The woman's expression shifted slightly, her demeanor becoming more cautious. "He's currently busy. You can leave your contact information, and we'll pass along your message." "This is urgent," Sam insisted. "I think he'll want to hear what I know." The receptionist nodded and picked up the phone. A few minutes later, a tall man in an expensive suit emerged from the office. His eyes scanned Sam with undisguised curiosity. "I'm Richard Morgan. What can I do for you?" His voice was low and commanding. Sam stepped forward. "We need to talk about my wife, Emily Jenkins." Richard paused for a moment, then gestured for him to follow into his office. The room was tastefully decorated, with folders neatly arranged on the desk and abstract paintings on the walls. "So, you're Emily's husband," Richard said, sitting down at his desk. "What can I help you with?" "You know what I mean." Sam stared directly into Morgan's eyes. "I know about the schemes you've dragged her into, and I want to know how to stop it." Richard chuckled, but there was no humor in his eyes. "You think you can walk in here and I'll just tell you everything? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Sam clenched his fists but kept his composure. "I'm not leaving until I know the truth." Richard leaned forward, his gaze turning menacing. "Listen, your wife is lucky to be alive. If you don't want something to happen to her, or to you, stay out of this." Sam realized the conversation was at a dead end, but now he had confirmation. Emily was indeed caught up in something dangerous. As Sam left the office, he felt like someone was watching him. His heart raced, but he refused to let panic take over. He got into his car and started driving home, but in the rearview mirror, he noticed a black car following him. Sam decided to test if it was just a coincidence. He turned onto another street, but the car continued to follow. He realized this was more than just paranoia. His life was now in danger, too. Sam sat in the dim light, lost in his thoughts. His head buzzed with memories of his meeting with Morgan. His words still echoed in his ears. "Stay out of this if you want to survive." But how could he step back when Emily was involved? Despite the betrayal, he still loved her. Or at least, the Emily she used to be. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of keys in the door. Sam tensed, clenching his fist. The door slowly opened, and Emily appeared on the threshold. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, disheveled hair, wrinkled clothes. She looked as if she had just escaped from something. "Sam, I need to talk to you," she said in a trembling voice, closing the door behind her. "You still have the audacity to come here?" His voice was cold, but sparks of anger and pain flickered in his eyes. "After everything you've done?" Emily took a step forward, but Sam stopped her with a gesture. "Please, listen to me," she pleaded. "It's not what you think. I didn't want any of this, but I didn't have a choice." "No choice? You had the choice not to lie to me, not to get involved in these games." His voice rose. "How could you do this to me, Emily?" She lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They threatened me, Sam. Morgan. He said he would destroy me if I didn't do what he asked. And when I tried to break free, he said you would be the next target." Emily's words pierced him like a cold knife. Sam didn't know if he could trust her, but there was sincerity in her eyes he couldn't ignore. "And you decided it was better to lie to me?" he asked, struggling to contain his emotions. I was scared, Sam. Afraid that if I told you the truth, you'd become their next target. They're watching you, watching us. Her voice broke with fear. They? Who else is involved in this? Sam felt his heart race. Emily sat down on the couch, burying her face in her hands. It's not just Morgan. He has people who carry out his orders. They're dangerous. I've seen what they do to those who defy them. I tried to escape, but they warned me they would find me. Sam stepped closer, his anger giving way to concern. Why didn't you tell me earlier? We could have found a solution together. Emily looked at him through her tears. Because I didn't want you to become a target. I didn't want you to suffer because of me. A heavy silence settled between them. Sam tried to gather his thoughts, but there were too many. He wanted to trust her, but doubts gnawed at him from within. All right, he finally said. Tell me everything. From the very beginning. Emily nodded and began her confession. She told him how her client, Richard Morgan, had initially seemed like an ordinary businessman. He offered her a lucrative deal, but over time, she realized his real business was money laundering. When she tried to cut ties, Morgan began blackmailing her. He discovered her vulnerabilities, including Sam. He knows everything about us, she said, even that you were at his office today. Sam felt the blood drain from his face. They've been watching me? Emily nodded. Sam, I came back because I want to protect you, but I don't know if we can get out of this. His mind raced with thoughts. He could no longer ignore the threat. If everything she said was true, they needed a plan. Sam and Emily sat in a car parked outside the local police station. The city at night was quiet, but the tension between them was palpable. Sam gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Emily sat beside him, nervously glancing at her phone. Are you sure this is the right move? He finally asked, breaking the silence. We don't have a choice, Sam, she replied. We can't handle this on our own. The police are our only chance. Sam sighed and looked at the station. The lights in the windows created an illusion of safety, but something inside him warned that this could be a trap. All right, he said, releasing the steering wheel. But if something goes wrong, we need to be ready. They got out of the car and entered the building. The reception area was empty, except for a duty officer who looked up as they approached. How can I help you? He asked, studying them carefully. We need to speak to a detective, Sam said. It's urgent. The officer nodded and motioned for them to sit. A few minutes later, a man in plain clothes entered the room. He looked experienced, with piercing eyes that immediately assessed the situation. I'm Detective Marcus, he introduced himself, extending a hand. How can I help you? Sam and Emily exchanged quick glances before Sam began speaking. We have information about illegal activities connected to one of the local businessmen. His name is Richard Morgan. Marcus's face remained impassive, but Sam noticed his eyes narrow slightly at the mention of the name. Go on, the detective said, sitting down at the desk and pulling out a notebook. Emily started explaining everything. How she got involved in the scheme, how she was threatened, and how they discovered they were being watched. The detective listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, Marcus leaned back in his chair. This is serious, he said. But do you realize you're accusing one of the most influential people in this city? If this is true, you could be in danger. We're already in danger, Sam replied. That's why we're here. Marcus nodded and stood up. Stay here. I'll be back in a few minutes. Sam and Emily were left alone in the room. The tension was unbearable. What do you think of him? Emily asked quietly. I don't know, Sam replied, but I don't think he told us everything he knows. When Marcus returned, his expression was more serious. I've checked your information, he said. We'll start an investigation, but for now, it's best if you stay under protection. We can offer you witness protection. Sam sighed with relief, but it was short-lived. As they left the station, Sam noticed a familiar black car parked in the lot. It was the same one that had followed him the previous night. Sam, what's wrong? Emily asked, noticing his expression. We're not alone, he whispered, leading her to their car. As they got in, their phone rang. The number was hidden. Sam answered. If you think you can outplay us, you're very mistaken, said a cold voice on the other end. We know your every move. Sam hung up and started the car. He knew they were caught in a game where their lives were at stake. Sam and Emily sat in a small house in the mountains, provided by the Witness Protection Program. It was a place far removed from their usual lives, with a view of the forest and no modern conveniences. Agent Marcus had assured them that this place was absolutely safe. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The first few days were quiet. Emily tried to adjust to the new routine, but she constantly glanced at her phone, even though she knew she couldn't call anyone. Sam, on the other hand, spent his time inspecting the house and its surroundings, memorizing every corner and detail that could be useful in case of danger. One evening, as the sun was setting, Sam noticed movement on the horizon. A small glint of light among the trees made him freeze. He silently called Emily, and they both stood still, watching the forest. "Maybe it's just hikers," she whispered, though her voice betrayed her fear. "Maybe," Sam replied, but deep down, he knew that wasn't true. The next day, their suspicion was confirmed. A package appeared on the porch. Sam picked it up and found a phone inside with no markings. On the screen, a single message read, "We know where you are." Emily went pale when she saw the message. "Is it them? How could they find us?" Her voice trembled. Sam clenched the phone in his hand, his anger rising. "I don't know, but we can't just sit here and wait." He immediately called Marcus, reporting what had happened. But the agent's response was far from reassuring. "Stay where you are," Marcus said. "We'll send people to you. Just don't panic." But Sam couldn't sit idly by. He knew waiting was a trap. He started packing their belongings, ready to flee. "We can't trust anyone," he said, stuffing a small bag. "If they found us here, it means they have someone inside the police." Emily was silent, her eyes brimming with tears. "Sam, what if this is the end? What if we can never get out of this?" she whispered. "We'll get out," he said firmly. "I won't let them destroy us." As night fell, Sam and Emily left the house, heading deeper into the forest. They moved silently, careful not to leave any trace. But suddenly, Sam heard a faint rustling behind them. He signaled for Emily to stop. "Who's there?" he called out, his flashlight held firmly in his hand. A man stepped out of the shadows. It was Marcus, but something about him was off. "I told you to stay put," he said, his voice colder than usual. Sam eyed him suspiciously. "How did you know we'd leave? And how did you find us?" Marcus sighed and reached into his jacket. "You're asking too many questions, Sam. This was always just a matter of time." Emily gasped, stepping behind Sam. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Marcus had been part of this from the start. He was the one feeding information to Morgan. "You betrayed us," Sam said, trying to stay calm. "It's not personal," Marcus replied. "It's just business." Marcus's demeanor was tense, his presence unsettling. Emily clung to Sam's arm, her tears silently trailing down her face, revealing the depth of her fear. "Leave us alone, Marcus," Sam said firmly. "You've done enough." Marcus smirked, taking a step forward. "You don't know who you're up against. Morgan controls everything. You're just a small obstacle in his way." Acting quickly, Sam pushed Emily aside and lunged toward Marcus, grabbing his arm. A struggle ensued, short but intense. Despite Marcus's strength, Sam's instincts took over. He managed to disarm Marcus, sending the object in his hand flying into the grass. "Emily, get it!" Sam yelled. Shaking, Emily moved toward the fallen object and picked it up. She pointed it at Marcus, her hands trembling. "Don't make me use this," she said, her voice breaking. Marcus chuckled, as if mocking her resolve. "You don't have it in you," he said. Sam stepped in, gently taking it from her and redirecting it at Marcus. "Now talk," Sam demanded. "How many of you are there? What do you want from us?" Marcus smirked again. "It doesn't matter anymore. They know where you are. You can't escape." Sam turned to Emily. "We're leaving. Now." They left Marcus tied to a tree in the forest and headed down an old road toward the nearest town. Their car felt like fragile protection against an invisible threat. Sam constantly checked the rearview mirror, searching for any sign of pursuit. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. First, we find a safe place, Sam replied. Then, we figure out how to expose Morgan. But their plan unraveled quickly. In the rearview mirror, Sam spotted two black SUVs rapidly approaching. Hold on, he shouted, pressing the gas pedal. The car sped down the empty road, but the SUVs stayed on their tail. One of them moved ahead, attempting to block their path. Sam veered onto the shoulder, the car bouncing but remaining under control. They're catching up, Emily cried. I know, Sam replied. We need a plan. He turned onto a narrow forest road, hoping the dense trees would help them lose their pursuers. But the black vehicles kept coming, relentless in their chase. This road's too tight for us to lose them, Sam said. But if we can just... His words were cut off when one of the cars rammed into them from behind. Sam's car swerved, but he managed to keep it on the road. Sam, this is the end. Emily screamed. No, not yet, he said, pressing harder on the gas pedal. As they rounded a bend, Sam saw an old bridge over a river. He suddenly braked, bringing the car to a stop at the edge of the road. Sam jumped out and quickly pulled Emily with him toward the forest. Run, he shouted. They ran through the dense forest, hearing shouts and footsteps behind them. Sam held Emily's hand tightly, guiding her through the underbrush. Their feet slipped on the wet ground, but they didn't stop. Marcus held a flashlight aimed directly at Sam. The tension was unbearable. Emily stood behind him, clutching his arm, her tears silently streaming down her face, revealing the fear that consumed her. You need to stay here, Sam, Marcus said coldly. This is your only chance to stay safe. Sam slowly raised his hands, his gaze unwavering. We can't stay, he said. If you've decided to betray us, then understand this. I'll do whatever it takes to get us out of here. Marcus smirked, taking a step forward. You don't even know who you're up against. Morgan has influence everywhere, and staying here is just a temporary solution. Sam stepped forward quickly, as if trying to move past Marcus. The sudden movement caused a brief scuffle, during which Emily grabbed their belongings from the ground. We're not staying here, Sam said firmly. We're taking control of our lives. Marcus sighed, his expression returning to its usual calm. If that's your decision, there's nothing more I can do to help. But remember, this choice might have consequences. Sam and Emily left, leaving Marcus behind. They set off into the forest, hoping to find their way to the nearest town. They left the campsite and followed a trail that led deeper into the woods. Their feet slipped on the damp ground, and the dense fog of the night made the path even more treacherous. Sam constantly looked over his shoulder, scanning for any signs of pursuit. Do you think he's really on our side? Emily asked, gripping Sam's hand tightly. I don't trust anyone anymore, Sam said. But as long as we keep moving, we have a chance. The night sky seemed infinite, but the forest was eerily quiet, giving them a temporary sense of safety. Their peace, however, didn't last long. Suddenly, Sam heard the faint sound of branches snapping behind them. They stopped. What's that? Emily whispered. I don't know, but we have to keep moving. They continued forward, but the sound grew louder. Sam's heart pounded faster, but he kept his composure. Finally, they reached an old road leading to an abandoned warehouse. Sam examined the building. We can hide here for a while, he said. It's our only option. The warehouse was dark and partially collapsed. Inside, it was cold, and every sound echoed like a whisper. Sam and Emily found a secluded corner where they could rest. Suddenly, they heard a rustling near the entrance. Sam gestured for Emily to stay put as he approached the door. He saw shadows moving outside the window. The pursuers were close. They found us, he whispered. We need to get out of here. Emily nodded, and they quietly made their way to the back exit. Once outside, the road ahead stretched endlessly into the darkness. Sam and Emily pushed through the dense forest, their steps muffled by the sounds of the night wind. Ahead, they spotted an old farmhouse visible from the road. The crumbling walls and collapsed roof looked precarious, but it was the only place they could hide. We'll be safe here, at least for a little while, Sam said, opening the creaky door. Emily nodded, her face tired but her eyes filled with hope. Inside, the farmhouse was covered in dust and old furniture. They found a room that had once served as a pantry. Sam locked the door with a latch and wedged a chair under the handle. "It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. Emily silently sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. She held an old lamp she had found in one of the rooms. "Do you think they'll find us here?" she asked. "We have to be ready for anything," Sam replied, his voice steadier than he felt. The farmhouse was quiet. It seemed as if the world had stopped, leaving them alone in this abandoned place. But in the middle of the night, Emily heard sounds. Her heart froze when she realized someone was approaching the building. She quickly woke Sam. "Sam, someone's coming," she whispered. He got up instantly, grabbing the flashlight from the table. They both listened silently to the sounds. Branches cracked under someone's feet, and faint flashlight beams flickered outside the windows. "Stay here," Sam said, motioning for Emily not to move. He cautiously approached the window and peered outside. Two men in dark clothing stood in the yard. Their faces were hidden under hoods, but their movements exuded confidence. "They're looking for us," Sam said, turning back to Emily. "We have to act fast." Sam decided to confront the men, but from the back exit. He signaled for Emily to stay in the room. His heart was racing, but he forced himself to stay calm. As he circled the building, he stopped at the corner, watching as one of the men approached the door. "We know you're in there." The man's voice was loud and confident. "Come out and we'll talk." Sam stepped forward, holding his hands up to show he was unarmed. "Who are you, and what do you want?" he asked. The men exchanged glances. One of them pulled down his hood, revealing his face. It was a young man with sharp features and a calm gaze. "We're here to help," he said, "but you need to trust us." "Why should I trust you?" Sam asked, his eyes never leaving the man. "Because we know Morgan's men are after you, and we're not with them. We want to take him down just as much as you do." Emily emerged from the building, her face filled with distrust. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" she asked. The young man pulled out a phone and showed them photos of Morgan's documents. Among them were copies of contracts, financial reports, and even photos of meetings that implicated Morgan in criminal activities. "We've been gathering this evidence for months," he said, "but we need your help to bring it to court." Sam and Emily examined the photos, but their distrust didn't fade completely. They knew any careless move could lead to disaster. Sam pulled the strangers aside. "If you're telling the truth, why have you stayed silent for so long?" he asked. "We were waiting for the right moment," the man replied, "and now it's here. But if we don't work together, Morgan will win." Emily stepped closer, her voice trembling. "We'll help. But if you betray us, there will be consequences for everyone." The man nodded, and they began planning their next move. But Sam knew trust was the one thing they lacked the most. Sam and Emily sat at an old wooden table in the abandoned farmhouse with the two men, who introduced themselves as Caleb and Will. Caleb, the younger of the two, led the discussion, laying out the details of their plan. He spread out documents in front of them, supposedly incriminating Morgan. Sam listened intently, but his distrust only grew. "This is our chance," Caleb said, pointing to several pages. "If we present this evidence to the media together, Morgan won't be able to cover up his crimes. His empire will fall." Emily nodded, though her hands trembled. "But what if he finds us first?" "We already know what he's capable of," she said. Caleb's voice was steady as he replied. "We have a contact at a national newspaper. We just need to get to the city, and everything will be set." Sam glanced at Will, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. His cold stare and reserved demeanor sparked suspicion. Sam decided not to mention it now, but his instincts told him something was wrong. The night passed relatively quietly, but Sam couldn't sleep. He heard Will leaving the house and talking on the phone for a long time, even though he had previously assured everyone that using phones was too dangerous. Sam stepped outside and quietly moved closer. "Yes, they've agreed. Everything is going according to plan," he overheard. Will spoke confidently, but his voice was low. Sam retreated into the shadows, deciding not to raise the alarm just yet. But now he was even more on edge. The next morning, the group set out for the city. Caleb insisted they take different routes to avoid being followed. Sam, Emily, and Caleb got into one car, while Will drove separately. Tension among the group grew as they drove. Caleb talked about the plans, but Emily remained silent, lost in her thoughts. Sam tried to stay calm, but felt as though every step they took had already been calculated. When they reached a gas station, Caleb suggested stopping. As Sam got out of the car, a man in plain clothes approached him. "You'd better be careful," the man said, handing him a note. "One of your companions isn't playing fair." Sam unfolded the note. It contained just one word, "Will." Sam returned to the car, more cautious than ever. When they reached the city, Caleb parked outside a small office where their contact was supposed to meet them. Will was already there, and his behavior seemed odd. He looked too calm, even pleased. Inside the office, the contact turned out to be legitimate, but Sam couldn't focus. He kept watching Will, who occasionally left the room as if to check something. Finally, Sam couldn't take it anymore. "Will, we need to talk," Sam said, motioning for him to step into another room. "Is something wrong?" Will replied, his eyes betraying no emotion. "Are you working for them?" Sam asked directly. Will smiled but didn't deny it. "You think it's that simple? Morgan has power you can't even imagine. If we don't play by his rules, we all lose." Sam felt his blood run cold. It meant they were trapped. Sam sat in the corner of the office, looking at Emily. Her face was pale, but her eyes revealed an internal struggle. Will stood a few meters away, arms crossed, his expression filled with confidence. Caleb silently observed the scene, looking confused by the tension in the room. "Did you know?" Sam finally broke the silence, his voice low, but every word sounded like a verdict. Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Sam, I found out recently, but I couldn't tell you. I was afraid it would destroy you." Sam rose to his feet, looking directly into her eyes. "Afraid for me? Or maybe afraid for yourself?" Will suddenly interjected, his voice calm but threatening. "You're all trying to play heroes, but you don't understand this is just a game. And the winner isn't the one with the truth. It's the one who controls the situation." Caleb frowned, his eyes darting between Sam and Will. "What are you up to, Will? Have you been working for Morgan this whole time?" Will laughed, the sound hollow. "Caleb, I'm doing what I have to do to survive. And if you want to live to see tomorrow, I suggest you do the same." Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Will, if you think we're going to let you manipulate us, you're wrong. Morgan may have power, but we have something he doesn't understand, the willingness to fight for the truth." Will shrugged. "Your choice," he said, turning to the door. "But when this is over, don't say I didn't warn you." When Will left, silence filled the room. Sam turned to Emily. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" "Because I didn't know how you'd react," she admitted. "But now I realize that staying silent only made things worse." Sam turned away, his shoulders tense. "We can keep fighting, but if we don't trust each other, we don't stand a chance." Emily stepped closer and touched his hand. "Sam, I made a mistake, but I'm on your side. I always have been and always will be." Caleb interrupted their moment. "We need to act now. We have the evidence, and if we don't expose Morgan, he'll destroy us." Sam nodded, gathering his thoughts. "We'll see this through, but we have to be careful." The group quickly gathered their belongings, taking all the documents and evidence with them. They headed to the newspaper office, where journalists were waiting to hear their story. But their journey was far from safe. They noticed they were being followed. Sam decided to split the group. Caleb and the journalists left with the evidence, while Sam and Emily stayed behind to distract the pursuers. When Sam and Emily finally returned to their hideout, they received the news. The article exposing Morgan's crimes had been published. All the evidence had been handed over to the authorities, and an investigation had begun. But their victory was bittersweet. They knew Morgan wouldn't stop. "What now?" Emily asked, sitting beside Sam on the steps. "We keep living," he replied. "But now we know the truth always finds a way to come to light." Were Emily's actions justified by her fear of protecting Sam, or did her silence only make their fight harder? What would you have done in her place?